Hey guys, it's Scott with Scotty B Cards, and in this video I want to talk about the state of the sports card hobby and whether or not we are currently in a good place. The state of the hobby. Some things are happening with the economy, things are happening internally on social media. All these things are impacting the way cards are valued. I want to discuss my views on the state of the hobby, whether we're in a really good or really bad place, and give my reasoning as to why. I'm going to break it down, the external factors, the internal factors, and just my thought process. Before we start, just know I'm not a legal finance expert, so please just know these are all my opinions. So the first thing I want to talk about are the external factors that are impacting the hobby. So inflation recently has hit basically a 40-year high since 1982 at 6.8% for the month of December. That's crazy. That means your spending power of each and every dollar you earn at work is now worth less, and unless you're getting a raise at 7%, you're actually taking a decrease in pay. The whole situation's pretty crummy, and you're seeing this because of supply chain, because of money printing, low interest rates. All these different things are causing the inflation rate to go up. And there's not much we can do because I think overall the government's relatively worried that if they raise the interest rates to combat inflation, then they could trigger a recession and all these concerns. So right now there is a relatively high inflation rate, which just makes it so people don't have as much money to spend on things. So if you have less money to spend on things, what are you going to cut? Your dinner budget for your family or your sports card budget? And I think we're seeing that with the average sports card collector. Even me, I'm not independently wealthy. And because I'm not independently wealthy, I'm not able to go out and buy every single card I want. And that's just how things are. I have to save, plan, sell cards, and make the necessary arrangements. So I'm being fiscally responsible when it comes to my sports cards. And I think a lot of people are like that. There's some people who are independently wealthy who don't have to worry about this type of a thing. And people in the past have viewed sports cards as a way to store their value. So, they won't be nearly as infected by inflation. But overall, I'm not quite sure that's the case. Maybe that's just because correlation isn't causation, meaning if sports cards are going down as inflation's going up, that just could be a random occurrence, not because sports cards aren't connected to being a solid asset. But overall, it's high, and that's something that's going to impact our hobby. Just not as much money to be spent because there's more important things to be spending that money on. After that, we have tax reporting. Oh yeah, everybody loves taxes. Tax reporting is going to be a huge thing that happens in 2022, which I think is concerning, and it could really be a detriment to sellers on eBay, because before on eBay, you would only receive a 1099K, I believe, when you hit $20,000 and 200 listings sold. Now you're going to be getting that same report that's also going to be submitted to the IRS once you hit $600. It does not matter how many transactions you have. That'll be going for next year. So this year's tax reporting is not the case, but next year you're going to be getting that. And that's a mess. That's going to be a mess in the sense in the past, whether you are selling anything on eBay, not just sports cards. If you just wanted to sell a bike you paid $3 grand for $800, you're still going to get that report, and you have to make sure you save your receipts. And I think it's just going to be a detriment to sellers on eBay. And eBay can't help it. This is a new law. This isn't something they introduced. So don't be mad at eBay, be mad at the government, because that's just something that has happened. Who knows how that'll shape up, but I think it is going to be something people have to consider when buying and selling sports cards. The next two things are kind of correlated. COVID sports cards hype is dying down, but ironically, the actual COVID fears are still hurting the overall economy. The economy is doing fine, but I think that there's some warning signs that we can't ignore exactly that. I'm not going to get into because I just don't want to, and I know sports cards way better than the economy itself, but people are still scared. You can see down here in this corner, COVID, Christmas plans, fears of Omicron, concern, all these different things. The media is just scaring you. Whether you believe in COVID, don't believe in COVID, people have differentiating opinions on COVID, whether that is going to be a political divide or not. It shouldn't be, but it's just how things are. And because of that, that's still hurting the overall economy. People may not really worry about it while others do, but at the same time, sports cards are going down. It's just some weird factors that are playing with some of the price mechanisms in sports cards. And lastly, there's some other things like NFTs. There's other sorts of collectibles. Top Shot was one that's kind of died down. I never invested, luckily, in Top Shot. Maybe it's a good time now because it's so low. But regardless, NFTs are starting to become more and more prominent, and that could be a differentiating type of collectibles investment that's being pushed by everybody who has money. All the big influencers, everybody has NFTs, and you may have some yourself, and you may know more about it. Even crypto is another type of category that's kind of viewed the same as collectibles, even though it's not a collectible, it's a true monetary item, it's money, but it's not viewed quite the same yet. It'll eventually get there, but right now it's not. So these are some of the things I think are impacting the sports card hobby, whether good or bad. And I think inflation is the biggest driver behind this effect. Next up are some hobby factors. We have high box prices. That hurts the hobby. Right now, these prices actually are dropping quite a bit in comparison to where they were earlier this year and the end of last year. So you can see you can get a Heritage Baseball hobby box for $89. So not bad. If you want to get the Bowman first edition box, you're at $360. It's just really expensive. Definitive is the most high-end Topps product. In the future, that might be a product that's like the exquisites from the mid 2000s. Nothing's ever going to match the collectability of those products, but in regards to being the high end, that is probably what it will be. Tribute's a relatively high-end product. Bowman is a very commonly loved product, but they're all expensive. And even for me, I don't open much product anymore because it's just something that I don't think is worth it. You hardly ever get the pay back unless you're opening definitive. You might have a better chance than you're opening heritage to get your actual return, whether it be positive or even just breaking even. And Bowman Chrome is the other thing that actually could make you some money back, but it's just too expensive right now. Prospecting can be extremely lucrative, but it's just one of those things where you got to buy the box or you can buy the prospects raw. It's just tough. And because of that, I think people are being turned off to the hobby. After that, we have a weaker checklist in baseball this year. There's still some good rookies. Some of these rookies are going to be very good. I made a video right here. I actually really like this video. It was less saying that this class is the worst ever and more saying that it's just not as predictable as previous years. In 2017, you had Judge and Bellinger. They might not be the best now, but at the time, they were hobby drivers. In 2018, you had Acuna, Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Gleyber Torres, ton of great players that were hobby drivers. 2019, you had Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Eloy Jimenez, Pete Alonso, Fernando Tatis Jr. 2020 got a little bit weaker, but you still had Bo Bichette, Jordan Alvarez, and Luis Robert. And then this year is a little bit tougher. You have Jared Kelenic, but he wasn't exactly good yet. He showed glimpses of what he can become, and I think he'll achieve them. You never know with prospects or young players. And you had Joe Adell, who didn't play great. All the players who should have been good weren't quite good, and those weaker checklists are having an effect on the current market. I don't think that this is going to continue, this certain part, because once 2022 comes around with Wander Franco and a couple other great players, that could change real quick in regards to hobby products being more liquid again and being more desired. After that was just the fact the hobby isn't cheap, guys. You know, back when I was a kid in the hobby, you could go to a hobby shop. I bought LeBron James rookie cards, Topps rookies for 30 bucks. And I know even right now you can buy Ronald Acuna rookie card, his base rookie, for pretty cheap. The difference is they were just a lot more scarce back then, and they still are more scarce because the print runs weren't as high. But the hobby isn't cheap now. If you want to get anything of current value that could actually rise in the short term to midterm, you got to buy some parallels, and parallels aren't going to be cheap. Boxes aren't cheap, and that can be a detriment to other people who want to join the hobby. It could be a barrier of entry that we don't realize because we're so accustomed to it. I wasn't fortunate enough to be collecting basketball from the early 2010s. I was doing baseball, but everybody who had basketball from the 2010s and they're already in the hobby made a fortune just because that's what was sought after from all the people entering. And that's not the case currently anymore. Those black swan events where things just happen like that are rare. You know, we had one in the 90s, that boom. We had one in 2020, that boom. If we're looking at every 30 years, they're not going to have another boom like that till 2050. I don't think that'll be the case, but the hobby has barriers of entry because of the price. And I actually like we're starting to decrease a little bit in value. You can see right here's the sales volume. We hit a really big high right here, and now the sales volume is getting lower. Less cards are being sold right now, which means they have to be listed for cheaper to sell, which will help people like me and you who want to collect in the short term. In the long term, I have no doubt that the hobby will go slightly back up once baseball's back, once you have a better rookie checklist and all of these things kind of level themselves out. And I already hit this a little bit, but print runs are up. Print runs are an extremely important thing to pay attention to. I want to emphasize that I personally do not believe we're in a position right now where we have a junk wax era. People currently want to call it a junk wax era. Maybe it's a junk parallel era because there's so many parallels. But regardless, if you look back in the 90s, there were a lot more cards printed than there are now. But every year we're ramping up more and more. And so base cards become a little bit less desirable year after year. Something else that you want to pay attention to as some prices are dropping. You can see this with Ronald Acuna Jr. He has 20,000 essentially PSA 10s for his Topps Update rookie. It's really hard to grow when there's that many. And lastly, the learning curve is tough for people who want to get in the hobby. I really try in my channel not to be condescending to people because one, I want to be a good human being and there's no point in being rude to people. And two, people who are newer to the hobby might have questions that we may know for years as veterans in the hobby, and it's not our place to be rude. We've all asked these same questions. They're questions that are just tough to really know what's going on, and there's not much information online to really describe what's going on. And so I see on Facebook groups all the time, people ask a question, is this worth anything? And people are just rude. Like, people don't know how to do eBay searches when they first get here to see the value of a card. Yeah, there's some dumb questions, but that's every hobby. But you still should be nice to people. And I think that is a factor that's hurting the hobby as well, because people might think that we're a bunch of jerks, and that might get them out of the hobby, which there are so many good people in the hobby, just like anything. So don't let that impact you. If you've had bad experiences with people, scammers, whatever else, stay in the hobby. It's worth it. So just know a lot of factors in the hobby themselves could be hurting some of our values. Prices are declining. We're seeing that this isn't actual prices, this is just sales volume. But if we go look later in this video, my next video is coming out, you'll see prices are declining. So the baseball lockout also has some impact on the market. The sport is playing a dangerous game with fans. What I mean by that is the average person does have millions of dollars. And those that do have billions of dollars that worked for it for a long time, they may understand our current views, but it's hard to look back in time and see exactly how people feel. And maybe the players are doing that currently. And I think it's good. I think it's good the players are making sure that the middle to lower tier players are being taken care of. But it looks awfully bad when billionaires and millionaires fight, and that can push people out of baseball card collecting and baseball as a whole. Things will get a lot uglier, guys, before they get better. There's no deadline to finish a deal. And because of that, you can see right here, 2 weeks into the lockout, they haven't even talked to each other really. That's not good. That's not how you compromise. That's not how you get things done. And that could be the case all the way up until February. They could basically start talking in February and think they can get it done. Both sides think the other one will cave, neither cave, and that pushes the season back a few games. That's when they'll start to feel some real pain, is that type of thing happens. But right now, there's no incentive for them to get it done quickly, even though it would help sports card collectors and the fans of baseball. And lastly, I just want to emphasize, even though I gave some negativity, I still wouldn't worry yet. I think that there's too much at stake, especially after 2020, and they can look back at 1994, the strike there that really killed baseball for a few years. I don't think they're stupid enough. I don't think either side is stupid enough. They both like money and they both want their money. And I think they realize that it's going to be bad for the overall values of their franchises and the overall salaries for years to come if they screw this up. So I wouldn't worry about it yet. I'm optimistic it'll be taken care of. Speaking of being mean to people, this is the place where it happens more often. I'll go quickly through social media, but I just want to say, just don't compare yourself to other people. Like, you might think I have a wonderful collection. I have some cool cards. I really do. But my collection's value is nowhere near like a lot of people in the hobby. People have millions of dollars of cards. And it's one of those things where you can compare and you can always dream of getting there, because it's okay to keep leveling your collection up, but don't let that take away from the hobby. It's going to hurt the overall state of the hobby if we're too preoccupied with comparing ourselves to others on social media than if we were just trying to have fun with our personal collection. I like Billy Butler. That's not going to be valuable. He's not my main PC. I pick up cool autographs of his that are cheap on auction sometimes, but I'm not really buying those in the sense it's going to be worth money. People who have millions of dollars of cards aren't buying Billy Butler autographs. Scams can hurt the hobby. I've personally been scammed out of $600 by a gentleman who is prevalent in the hobby for being a scammer right when I got back into it, and I almost quit instantly. I remember I was really upset and I never got that money back, but it's one of those things that you have to be careful of. You have to be not trusting of people. Granted, like, there's some individuals you may have worked with a lot, but they still make bad decisions. People may have times and hardships that you're unaware of, and they might think they need to scam you to live. And I do not think it's correct. It's still stealing, but scams are hurting the hobby. And I think that is more prevalent than ever with all these different social media sites. Drama existing between people complaining about others, bigger accounts being attacked. If you have any social media, you know, I don't need to go into it too much. Baseball card social media is no different than regular social media. People pretend life is perfect. So yes, people will go to card shows and they'll spend $20,000, and that's more than some people make at their normal job. We don't really comprehend it. And I've been at times where I've had a lot more money to spend than other times as I'm selling other cards. Just be aware we're all at different points in our collecting lives and where we're at. So don't feel bad, because sometimes you just aren't in the right spot to spend a couple $1,000s on a card, and that is completely okay. You might not be in the spot to spend $50 on a card, and that's okay. You can enjoy the hobby through videos like this. You can enjoy it through going through quarter boxes and just leveling up slowly and increasing your collection. And I want to emphasize, not everything is bad. I think the overall state of the hobby is not necessarily healthy right now. I don't think we're at a point where we are as healthy as we would have hoped entering this year. And prices are down, you know, people are negative, but I think we're going to be just fine. I really, really do. So I want to give a few reasons why. The hobby grows and adapts. It's grown and adapted for years. It's always been this way. It goes in and out, and people will collect different things, and it gets better. There are more people in the hobby now than ever. You might think that 1990 had more people in the hobby. There might have been more people buying baseball cards because they were told to by people in the media, but there are more people now in the hobby than ever who are actually active in the hobby, and that is a very good sign for collecting. Not just baseball, but basketball, Pokemon, all sorts of different types of things. NFTs, I don't really count that as our hobby, but regardless, people are putting money into alternative investments and art and things like that. Video games, all these different types of collectibles assets are being looked at, and that's good. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. Prices are declining, which I view as a positive. That allows people who aren't as wealthy to go buy some cool stuff. I know we might not have as much money due to other economic factors, but regardless, if you have some money, now's a good time. You can go get some cool cards you probably couldn't have prior, and that's a positive. And the hobby, like I already said, is still popular. So if you are in a dip, your player you collect's in a dip, now is the time to buy. Mookie Betts is in a dip, and he's going to be fine next year. And he's going to have probably a 5 to 7 war season, and his cards will go back up. And I'm going to be happy about that as I keep buying him in the offseason. I remember even last year, after he got second in MVP voting, I got some cards for a really good deal, and they doubled, tripled, quadrupled within 2 months. And that's just how this time of year can happen. As the season approaches, hype gets amplified. And if you watch the channel, you know hype is the driving factor behind modern sports cards. One thing I want to emphasize, it is okay to miss a player or a product. You can miss out on a Ronald Acuna Jr. You can miss out on a Juan Soto. You can make decisions that aren't good, and doesn't mean that you need to stop collecting, or it doesn't mean you've missed out entirely. You know how many good players are in the minor leagues right now? There are a lot. There's Hall of Famers in the minor leagues. And if you went out and just speculated on a few, you're not going to win. But if you can really go out and evaluate someone, you feel confident, or you can see a arbitrage opportunity, you can still make money. There's always going to be opportunities to buy. You know, Christian Yelich, I remember when I was collecting back in 2017, I was picking up his Topps Chrome autographs for $6. They peaked at $150 a year later, and I made really good profit. There's still players like that, whether it's Kyle Tucker, Bo Bichette, whether it's going to be other types of young studs. They're going to have times where these players are going to be worth more money. So if you missed before, it's okay. We all miss. There's always something else. Always look forward to the future, because you're going to have opportunities. If you are not having fun right now, if the state of the hobby for you personally is poor, it is okay to take a step back and just take a break for a month, because when you come back, you'll be able to go to eBay and search, and you'll be back into it. You might miss a few auctions you really care about, but is it a big deal? I miss on auctions all the time I care about, and I forget about them, and you will too. So don't kill yourself in the hobby. The hobby's supposed to be fun. Overall, the state of the hobby right now is not in the best place, which could create a good buying opportunity, because more and more large companies are investing in sports cards, and they're not going away anytime soon. As it gets bigger, don't get discouraged, because this is how things happen. If you love your hobby, it's good that it's growing. It'll help your values go up, but it will also help you have more opportunity to have better experiences, even though it doesn't feel like it now. That is it for this video. If you liked it, please leave a like so that way other people can see it. And other than that, I will catch you in the next one. See ya.